Nervous?
Yeah, because I got a surprise.
Uh-oh.
What's up?
Welcome back to the Life with the Browns. Sometimes life changes in ways no one expects. A single decision can shake an entire family, challenge years of tradition, and force everyone involved to confront difficult emotions. For Tammy Slaton, the latest chapter of her journey has become one of the most talked about moments among fans. After overcoming countless personal struggles, dramatic health battles, and emotional setbacks, Tammy now appears determined to make one of the biggest choices of her life. But instead of bringing her family closer together, that decision has reportedly created tension, uncertainty, and emotional disagreements behind the scenes. For years, viewers have watched Tammy fight through obstacles that many people believed were impossible to overcome. Her transformation wasn't limited to weight loss alone. She slowly began rebuilding her confidence, discovering her own voice, and learning that she deserved happiness just like anyone else. Every milestone represented another step toward independence. Yet with that independence came something her family wasn't fully prepared for: the possibility that Tammy would begin making major life decisions without relying on their approval. According to reports surrounding the family's recent situation, Tammy's relationship with Andrea Dalton gradually became far more serious than many people realized. Unlike relationships that developed under the spotlight, this connection reportedly grew quietly. Rather than making headlines every week, the relationship was built through conversations, emotional support, and spending meaningful time together away from constant public attention. Those close to the situation suggest that Tammy found a sense of peace she had been searching for over the years. As the relationship continued to grow stronger, Tammy reportedly became increasingly confident about her future. Friends say she no longer viewed herself as someone who constantly needed permission or reassurance from others. Instead, she wanted to build a future based on her own choices. That change represented a major turning point in her personal journey. For someone who had spent years depending on family guidance during difficult periods, stepping into complete independence naturally surprised many of the people closest to her. However, not everyone reportedly welcomed the news with immediate excitement. Family members who had always played active roles in Tammy's life allegedly expressed concerns about the speed of the relationship and questioned whether such a significant commitment was happening too quickly. From their perspective, those concerns came from love and a desire to protect Tammy after everything she had experienced in previous relationships. Having watched her endure heartbreak before, they understandably wanted to be certain she wasn't rushing toward another emotional challenge. Despite those concerns, insiders claim Tammy remained remarkably calm. Instead of reacting emotionally or backing away from her plans, she reportedly listened carefully before making it clear that the decision ultimately belonged to her. Those conversations are said to have become increasingly emotional as different opinions surfaced. What started as family discussions reportedly evolved into deeper disagreements about trust, independence, and Tammy's right to choose her own future. One of the biggest changes wasn't simply the relationship itself, it was Tammy's response. In previous years, she often leaned heavily on family opinions during difficult moments. This time, however, she reportedly stood firm. According to those familiar with the situation, Tammy wanted everyone to understand that she appreciated their concern but no longer wanted her life directed by anyone else's expectations. That message marked a significant shift in family dynamics and demonstrated just how much she believes she has grown over the past few years. As emotions continued to rise, discussions surrounding a possible wedding reportedly became even more serious. Rumors suggested that Tammy was considering moving forward with her plans regardless of whether every family member supported the decision. That possibility immediately increased the emotional stakes for everyone involved. While some relatives reportedly hoped more conversations could change her mind, Tammy appeared increasingly focused on building the future she envisioned for herself. Whether those reports ultimately prove accurate or not, one thing remains clear. Tammy's personal journey has evolved into something much bigger than a simple romance. It represents confidence, independence, and the desire to shape her own future after years of relying on others during life's hardest moments. As more details continue to emerge, fans are watching closely to see whether this emotional chapter brings healing, deeper division, or perhaps an unexpected compromise that no one saw coming. As Tammy's relationship became more serious, the conversations inside her family reportedly grew even more emotional. What had started as simple questions soon turned into difficult discussions about trust, timing, and whether she was making the right decision. Some relatives were said to believe that Tammy was moving faster than expected, while others simply wanted more time to understand the woman who had become such an important part of her life. For Tammy, however, the situation looked very different. She believed she had spent enough years waiting for happiness and wasn't willing to delay her future because of other people's fears. Sources familiar with the situation claim that Andrea Dalton remained calm throughout the growing tension. Rather than responding publicly to every rumor or criticism, she reportedly focused on supporting Tammy behind the scenes. That quiet approach seemed to strengthen their relationship even more. While outside voices questioned the future of the romance, Tammy reportedly appreciated having someone who listened instead of judging every decision she made. After years of feeling misunderstood, that emotional stability may have meant more than anything else. Family members, on the other hand, were said to have mixed emotions. They wanted Tammy to be happy, but they also carried memories of the difficult experiences she had survived in previous relationships. Those painful chapters made them cautious. Some reportedly worried that Tammy's excitement might prevent her from seeing potential problems, while others questioned whether enough time had passed for such a life-changing commitment. Their concerns were rooted in love, but Tammy increasingly viewed them as obstacles standing between her and the life she wanted. According to insiders, several emotional conversations took place as everyone tried to express their feelings. Voices were reportedly raised during certain discussions, but beneath the frustration was genuine concern from both sides. Tammy wanted her family to respect her independence, while her loved ones wanted reassurance that she was making a careful decision. Unfortunately, neither side seemed ready to fully accept the other's perspective, leaving emotions running higher with every passing day. Tammy Slaton reportedly found herself caught in the middle of the situation. Having always shared a close bond with Tammy, she allegedly struggled to balance her role as a supportive sister with her own personal concerns. On one hand, she wanted Tammy to experience happiness after everything she had endured. On the other, she reportedly worried about whether events were unfolding too quickly. That emotional conflict made every conversation more difficult, as both sisters tried to protect a relationship that had already survived countless challenges over the years. As wedding rumors continued to spread online, speculation only intensified. Some reports suggested Tammy was considering keeping the ceremony small and private if disagreements continued. Rather than planning a large public celebration, she allegedly wanted a peaceful day focused entirely on her commitment instead of family conflict. While nothing had been officially confirmed, the mere possibility of a private ceremony fueled even more discussion among viewers and those close to the family. Throughout the uncertainty, Tammy reportedly remained remarkably determined. People familiar with the situation claimed she had reached a point in her life where personal happiness carried greater importance than outside approval. Years of fighting health issues, overcoming emotional setbacks, and rebuilding her confidence had changed the way she viewed herself. She no longer wanted fear to dictate her future. Instead, she hoped to build a relationship based on trust, honesty, and emotional support. That determination also reflected a larger transformation taking place within Tammy herself. Fans who had followed her journey from the beginning recognized that this wasn't the same person they first met years ago. She had grown stronger emotionally, learned valuable lessons through painful experiences, and gradually developed the confidence to make difficult decisions without relying entirely on others. Whether people agreed with her choices or not, many acknowledged that Tammy was finally taking ownership of her own life. Even so, unanswered questions continued to surround the relationship. Would the family eventually embrace Tammy's decision? Could the emotional divide be repaired before any wedding plans moved forward? Or would this disagreement permanently change the family's dynamic? Those questions remained unanswered, leaving both viewers and those closest to Tammy wondering what the next chapter would bring. One thing, however, seemed increasingly certain: Tammy was determined to write her own story, regardless of how complicated the journey became. Welcome back to The Life with the Browns. As the days passed, the emotional distance between Tammy and some members of her family reportedly became harder to ignore. Conversations that once happened every day were said to become shorter, less frequent, and much more cautious. Every phone call carried a sense of uncertainty, and every discussion seemed to circle back to the same difficult subject: Tammy's future with Andrea Dalton. While everyone involved claimed to want the best outcome, they clearly disagreed on what that outcome should look like. According to people familiar with the situation, Tammy wasn't trying to create conflict. Instead, she simply wanted her loved ones to understand that this decision belonged to her. For years, many of the biggest choices in her life had involved advice, intervention, and family discussions. This time, however, she reportedly felt confident enough to take responsibility for both the rewards and the consequences of her own actions. That confidence marked one of the biggest personal changes fans had ever seen from Tammy. Meanwhile, Andrea reportedly continued to stand beside her without adding unnecessary drama to an already emotional situation. Rather than encouraging arguments or responding to criticism publicly, Andrea was described as someone who focused on keeping Tammy calm through the pressure. Insiders claimed she often reminded Tammy that outside opinions would always exist, but the most important thing was staying honest with herself and making decisions she could live with in the future. As speculation surrounding a possible wedding continued to grow, reports suggested that Tammy and Andrea quietly began discussing what their ceremony might actually look like. Instead of planning an elaborate event filled with hundreds of guests, they reportedly considered something much smaller and more private. The idea wasn't about excluding anyone out of spite. According to those close to the couple, it was simply about avoiding unnecessary conflict on what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of their lives. That possibility created another wave of concern within the family. Some relatives reportedly feared that a private ceremony would permanently damage relationships if important loved ones weren't present. Others still hoped there was enough time to rebuild trust before any final decisions were made. Although emotions remained intense, there were also signs that everyone was beginning to realize Tammy wasn't going to abandon her plans simply because people disagreed with them. Sources claimed that several heartfelt conversations took place behind closed doors. Some reportedly ended with tears, while others concluded without either side changing its position. Tammy is said to have listened carefully to every concern, but she also made it clear that she wasn't looking for permission anymore. She appreciated advice, yet she believed the final choice belonged to her alone. For someone who had spent years struggling with confidence, that level of certainty represented enormous personal growth. As the rumored wedding timeline moved closer, communication reportedly changed once again. Instead of constant debates, some family members allegedly chose to step back and reflect on the situation. Rather than continuing arguments that weren't producing solutions, they reportedly began asking themselves whether protecting their relationship with Tammy mattered more than winning the disagreement. It wasn't an easy realization, but it appeared to shift the emotional atmosphere in a more thoughtful direction. Tammy, meanwhile, reportedly remained focused on building a future she believed would bring her peace. She had survived years of public scrutiny, painful setbacks, and personal heartbreak. Every challenge had shaped the person she was becoming, and many observers felt this latest chapter reflected someone who had finally learned to trust her own judgment. Whether her family completely agreed or not, Tammy seemed determined to move forward with confidence instead of fear. Even fans found themselves divided as new reports surfaced online. Some applauded Tammy for embracing independence after everything she had overcome. Others sympathized with her family's concerns, believing they simply wanted to protect someone they loved deeply. The debate spread across social media, where countless viewers shared different opinions about whether Tammy was making the right choice or taking a significant emotional risk. Despite all the uncertainty, one truth remained impossible to ignore. Tammy's story had grown far beyond a reality television storyline. It had become a deeply personal journey about healing, self-confidence, and discovering the courage to choose her own path. Whatever happened next, this chapter would likely shape not only her future relationship with Andrea, but also the way her family understood the new, stronger version of Tammy Slaton. As reports surrounding Tammy's future continued to circulate, it became increasingly clear that the disagreement was no longer centered on a single decision. It had evolved into something much deeper, a test of trust, acceptance, and the changing roles within a family that had spent years supporting one another through life's greatest challenges. For Tammy, this wasn't simply about planning a wedding. It was about proving to herself that she was capable of building a future based on her own judgment, even if that path wasn't understood by everyone around her. Those close to the situation suggested that the emotional pressure reached its highest point as discussions about the future became unavoidable. Family members reportedly continued expressing concern, hoping Tammy would reconsider or at least slow down before making such a significant commitment. They weren't necessarily questioning whether she deserved happiness. Instead, they wanted reassurance that every possible consequence had been carefully considered. Years of watching Tammy overcome hardship had naturally made them protective, and letting go of that protective role wasn't easy. Tammy, however, appeared to see things from an entirely different perspective. According to insiders, she believed she had already spent enough of her life allowing fear, uncertainty, and outside opinions to influence her choices. Every health battle, every emotional setback, and every painful lesson had taught her the importance of trusting herself. She reportedly felt that if she continued waiting until everyone approved of her decisions, she might never truly begin living the life she wanted. Andrea Dalton also remained a steady presence throughout the uncertainty. People familiar with the relationship described her as calm and patient, choosing encouragement over confrontation. Rather than becoming involved in every disagreement, Andrea reportedly focused on reminding Tammy why they had chosen one another in the first place. During moments when emotions became overwhelming, that quiet reassurance may have been exactly what Tammy needed. Instead of adding to the tension, Andrea appeared determined to create stability during one of the most emotional periods of Tammy's life. Meanwhile, speculation surrounding a possible private wedding continued to gain attention online. Although no official plans had been confirmed, the possibility alone sparked countless conversations among fans. Many wondered whether Tammy would actually move forward with a ceremony attended by only a small group of supportive friends. Others questioned whether the family would eventually put their concerns aside to avoid missing one of the most meaningful moments in Tammy's life. With so many unanswered questions, every new rumor attracted even more attention. According to reports, communication within the family remained complicated. Some conversations reportedly ended with mutual understanding, while others highlighted just how differently everyone viewed the situation. Yet, despite those disagreements, one important detail stood out. No matter how emotional the discussions became, there were still signs that everyone cared deeply about one another. The conflict wasn't driven by hatred or resentment. Instead, it reflected a family struggling to adapt as one of its members embraced a level of independence they had never witnessed before. For Tammy, independence had become more than just a personal goal. It had become part of her identity. After years of depending on others during some of the darkest chapters of her life, she now wanted the opportunity to prove that she could navigate happiness, love, and commitment on her own terms. That determination resonated with many viewers who had watched her transformation from the very beginning. They recognized that her confidence wasn't built overnight. It had been earned through countless setbacks, sacrifices, and victories that shaped the woman she had become. Fans remained deeply divided as the story continued to unfold. Some applauded Tammy for standing firm and refusing to let fear control her future. Others believed her family was acting out of genuine concern and hoped additional conversations would bring everyone back together before permanent damage was done. Across social media, opinions varied widely, with many acknowledging that both sides seemed motivated by love, even if they expressed it in very different ways. As more reports emerged, another possibility began gaining attention, that time itself might become the greatest healer. Initial shock often fades, and emotional reactions sometimes soften once people have the chance to reflect. Some insiders suggested that certain family members had already begun reconsidering their approach, recognizing that preserving their relationship with Tammy might matter more than continuing the disagreement. While no dramatic reconciliation had been confirmed, there appeared to be growing hope that understanding could eventually replace frustration. Even with that hope, the future remained uncertain. Would Tammy and Andrea move forward exactly as planned? Would the family eventually unite in support of the relationship? Or would this chapter permanently reshape the bonds they had spent years building together? Those answers remained unknown. What was certain, however, was that Tammy's journey had entered one of its most defining moments, a chapter centered not only on love, but also on courage, independence, and the determination to create a future that truly belonged to her. As the emotional storm surrounding Tammy's relationship continued, it became clear that everyone involved had reached a crossroads. Weeks of difficult conversations, unanswered questions, and growing uncertainty had changed the atmosphere within the family. While no one wanted to lose the close bond they had built over the years, they also couldn't ignore the fact that Tammy was determined to make her own choices. Whether those choices would strengthen or weaken family relationships remained the biggest question hanging over everyone involved. According to people familiar with the situation, Tammy had grown noticeably more confident in recent months. The woman who once relied heavily on others for reassurance now appeared ready to trust her own instincts. Friends reportedly noticed that she spoke with greater certainty about her future, explaining that she no longer wanted fear or doubt to prevent her from chasing happiness. Every challenge she had overcome, from serious health struggles to emotional heartbreak, had helped shape a stronger version of herself, one that refused to let past disappointments control tomorrow's decisions. Andrea Dalton reportedly continued to play an important role throughout this difficult period. Rather than responding publicly to every rumor or criticism, she remained focused on supporting Tammy privately. Those close to the couple claimed Andrea understood just how emotionally exhausting the situation had become. Instead of adding pressure, she reportedly encouraged Tammy to stay patient, communicate honestly, and remember why they had chosen to build a future together in the first place. That steady presence seemed to provide Tammy with the emotional balance she had been searching for. At the same time, members of Tammy's family reportedly faced difficult emotions of their own. Some struggled with the realization that they could no longer influence every major decision in Tammy's life. For years, they had stepped in whenever she faced serious obstacles, believing it was their responsibility to protect her. Watching Tammy insist on complete independence wasn't easy. Even those who disagreed with her decisions still wanted to remain an important part of her life, creating an emotional conflict that had no simple solution. As speculation about wedding plans continued spreading online, fans became increasingly invested in every new report. Social media discussions exploded with different opinions. Some praised Tammy for finally taking control of her future after years of personal struggles. Others believed her family was simply trying to prevent another painful experience. The conversation quickly became one of the season's most talked about topics, with viewers debating whether independence should outweigh family concerns when life-changing decisions are involved. According to insiders, Tammy reportedly understood why her loved ones were worried, but she also hoped they would eventually recognize how much she had changed. She believed people were still judging her based on the person she used to be instead of the person she had become. Years earlier, she may have lacked confidence when making difficult decisions. Now, however, she reportedly felt prepared to accept both the rewards and the consequences of her own choices. That personal growth became one of the defining themes of her journey. Behind closed doors, conversations reportedly became less about changing Tammy's mind and more about preserving family relationships. Some relatives allegedly realized that continuing the conflict could create lasting emotional damage. Instead of focusing entirely on the wedding itself, they began thinking about the years that would follow. Missing one important event could potentially affect birthdays, holidays, family gatherings, and countless future memories. That realization reportedly encouraged some family members to approach the situation with greater understanding, even if complete agreement still seemed impossible. Meanwhile, Tammy remained focused on moving forward. She reportedly refused to allow fear or uncertainty to overshadow one of the happiest periods of her life. While she acknowledged that rebuilding trust with certain family members might take time, she also believed genuine relationships could survive honest disagreements. According to those close to her, Tammy hoped everyone would eventually see that choosing her own path didn't mean she loved her family any less. It simply meant she was learning to love herself enough to make her own decisions. As this emotional chapter continued unfolding, one message became increasingly clear. Tammy's journey was no longer defined solely by weight loss or reality television. It had become a story about resilience, self-confidence, personal growth, and the courage to embrace an uncertain future. Whether her family ultimately celebrated beside her or needed more time to accept the changes, Tammy appeared determined to keep moving forward with hope instead of hesitation. The next chapter promised even more emotional moments, difficult conversations, and decisions that could reshape family relationships for years to come. Yet, through every challenge, Tammy seemed committed to one goal above all else: to build a future that reflected who she is. As the situation continued to unfold, it became increasingly clear that Tammy Slaton had reached one of the defining moments of her life. The conversations were no longer centered on whether she should move forward with her relationship. Instead, they had shifted towards something much bigger: whether the people closest to her could accept that she was no longer the same person they had known for years. Tammy had fought through physical challenges, emotional setbacks, and personal heartbreak, and every one of those experiences had changed her perspective. Now she believed it was finally time to live life according to her own values. Reports suggested that communication between Tammy and certain family members remained complicated. While no one completely walked away from the relationship, there were moments when silence replaced conversation. Phone calls reportedly became less frequent, and some discussions ended before either side truly felt heard. Even so, there were signs that emotions were beginning to settle. Instead of reacting out of frustration, several relatives reportedly started reflecting on everything Tammy had accomplished during the past few years and acknowledged that she had earned the right to make important decisions for herself. Throughout this emotional period, Andrea Dalton reportedly continued offering steady encouragement. People familiar with the relationship claimed that Andrea never attempted to isolate Tammy from her loved ones. Instead, she allegedly encouraged open communication while reminding Tammy that rebuilding trust often takes patience. That balanced approach appeared to strengthen their connection. Rather than creating more conflict, Andrea focused on helping Tammy stay calm whenever outside pressure became overwhelming. At the same time, Tammy reportedly found herself thinking about what marriage truly represented. According to those close to her, the ceremony itself wasn't the most important part. What mattered was building a future with someone she trusted completely. After years of uncertainty and difficult life experiences, Tammy reportedly wanted a relationship founded on honesty, mutual respect, and emotional stability. She believed that real commitment wasn't measured by public approval, but by the willingness of two people to support one another through life's challenges. Meanwhile, speculation among fans continued to grow. Every new rumor sparked another wave of discussion across social media, with viewers offering different opinions about Tammy's decision. Some praised her remarkable personal growth, pointing out how much confidence she had gained since the early seasons of the show. Others sympathized with her family's concerns, believing they simply wanted to protect someone they loved deeply. The debate highlighted just how emotionally invested audiences had become in Tammy's journey over the years. According to insiders, one of the biggest changes involved the way Tammy handled criticism. In the past, negative opinions often affected her confidence. This time, however, she reportedly remained composed. Rather than allowing criticism to control her emotions, she listened respectfully before continuing to follow the path she believed was right. That emotional maturity surprised many observers and demonstrated just how much she had evolved through years of personal growth. Family members also reportedly began facing an important realization. Whether they agreed with Tammy's choices or not, they couldn't make those choices on her behalf. That understanding wasn't easy to accept, especially after spending so many years supporting Tammy during difficult moments. However, some relatives allegedly recognized that maintaining a loving relationship with her might ultimately matter more than continuing to argue over a decision that had already been made. As time passed, the emotional atmosphere reportedly became slightly less intense. The disagreements hadn't disappeared completely, but there were growing signs that both sides wanted to avoid permanent damage. Instead of focusing entirely on past frustrations, conversations slowly began shifting toward the future. Everyone involved understood that life would continue after the wedding, and preserving family connections remained important despite their differences. For Tammy, this chapter represented much more than romance. It symbolized independence, resilience, and the confidence to embrace a future she had chosen for herself. Every obstacle she had overcome contributed to the woman she had become, and she appeared determined not to let fear stand in the way of her happiness again. While the road ahead would likely include additional challenges, Tammy seemed ready to face them with a level of strength that viewers hadn't always seen in previous years. As this remarkable journey continued, one question still remained unanswered. Could love, patience, and understanding eventually bring everyone back together, or would this emotional chapter permanently reshape the family's relationships? Only time would reveal the answer, but one thing had become impossible to deny. Tammy Slaton had entered a completely new stage of her life, and whatever happened next would become another unforgettable part of her inspiring story. As Tammy's story continued to unfold, it became increasingly obvious that this chapter of her life was about much more than romance. It represented a complete shift in the way she viewed herself and the future she wanted to build. For years, people had watched Tammy battle health issues, emotional struggles, and moments when giving up might have seemed easier than moving forward. Yet every obstacle she overcame seemed to strengthen her determination. Now, that same determination was guiding one of the biggest personal decisions she had ever faced. According to reports, the possibility of a wedding remained very real, even though many questions still surrounded the situation. While no official details had been confirmed, those familiar with the matter suggested that Tammy and Andrea Dalton continued discussing their future together privately. Rather than allowing outside pressure to dictate their next steps, they reportedly focused on creating a relationship built on trust and understanding. That quiet approach stood in sharp contrast to the public speculation that continued to grow across social media and entertainment news. Meanwhile, Tammy's family reportedly found themselves facing an emotional reality they had never experienced before. For years, they had played central roles in helping Tammy through life's biggest challenges. Whether it involved health decisions, personal struggles, or emotional support, the family had always been deeply involved. This situation, however, was different. Tammy wasn't asking anyone to make the decision for her. She simply wanted them to respect it. Accepting that new reality proved difficult for some family members, especially those who believed they were acting out of love and concern. According to insiders, several relatives began looking at the situation from a different perspective as time passed. Instead of focusing solely on their fears, they reportedly started recognizing how much Tammy had changed over the past few years. Her incredible weight loss journey had transformed not only her physical health, but also her confidence. She was no longer the uncertain woman viewers had first met years ago. She had developed emotional strength, learned from painful experiences, and gained the courage to trust her own judgment. Andrea reportedly continued encouraging Tammy to remain patient throughout the emotional process. Rather than demanding immediate acceptance from the family, she allegedly understood that rebuilding trust often takes time. Those close to the couple claimed Andrea never tried to create unnecessary conflict. Instead, she focused on supporting Tammy while hoping that, eventually, everyone would come together through honest conversations and mutual understanding. That patient attitude reportedly helped Tammy stay focused whenever emotions threatened to overwhelm her. Fans also continued sharing their opinions online, creating lively debates across social media platforms. Some viewers applauded Tammy for embracing independence after years of relying on others during difficult moments. They believed she had earned the right to make her own decisions without constant interference. Others remained sympathetic toward her family, arguing that their concerns reflected genuine love rather than control. The discussion quickly became one of the most emotional topics among longtime followers of the series. Despite the public attention, Tammy reportedly remained surprisingly calm. According to people familiar with the situation, she understood that not everyone would immediately support her choices. However, she also believed true growth meant accepting responsibility for her own future instead of allowing fear or criticism to determine every major decision. That mindset represented one of the greatest emotional transformations of her entire journey and highlighted just how far she had come since the beginning of her television career. As weeks passed, there were subtle indications that tensions within the family might slowly be easing. Although complete agreement had not been reached, some relatives reportedly appeared more willing to listen than argue. Emotional conversations gradually shifted away from trying to change Tammy's mind and toward finding ways to preserve the family's close bond despite their differences. While the healing process remained incomplete, those small changes offered hope that reconciliation might still be possible. For Tammy, however, the most important lesson had already been learned. Happiness couldn't always depend on universal approval. Sometimes moving forward required making difficult choices that not everyone would understand. She reportedly accepted that reality with remarkable maturity, recognizing that every meaningful life decision comes with both risks and rewards. Instead of allowing uncertainty to stop her, she chose to embrace the future with confidence and optimism. Although many questions remained unanswered, one thing had become increasingly clear. Tammy Slaton's journey was no longer defined by her past struggles alone. It had evolved into a story of resilience, independence, personal growth, and the courage to follow her own heart. Whatever happened next, this emotional chapter would undoubtedly become one of the most significant turning points in her remarkable life story. Welcome back to The Life with the Browns. As Tammy Slaton's story continued to evolve, another unexpected detail began attracting attention among fans. While much of the conversation centered on her relationship with Andrea Dalton, people also started looking more closely at Andrea's past. Questions that had once been quietly discussed online suddenly became a major topic across social media, with viewers wondering whether there was more to the story than had initially been revealed. Although rumors spread quickly, many fans wanted facts rather than speculation. According to public reports, Andrea had faced legal issues several years before meeting Tammy. Those reports claimed she had been arrested on multiple charges, including driving without a valid license and other traffic-related offenses. Later, another reported arrest allegedly occurred after she failed to appear for a scheduled court hearing connected to the earlier case. While these records became widely discussed online, supporters of the couple pointed out that past legal issues do not always define a person's character or future. As these reports circulated, many viewers wondered whether Tammy had been aware of Andrea's history before their relationship became serious. Neither Tammy nor Andrea publicly addressed every rumor in detail, leaving fans to draw their own conclusions. Some believed complete honesty would strengthen the relationship, while others argued that personal mistakes from years ago should remain in the past if someone has genuinely changed. The debate quickly became one of the hottest topics surrounding the couple. Meanwhile, Tammy appeared focused on the present rather than past controversies. People close to the situation suggested she valued the way Andrea treated her every day instead of judging her solely by previous mistakes. After everything Tammy had experienced throughout her own life, she reportedly understood that everyone carries a past they may not be proud of. More importantly, she believed growth should be measured by the choices a person makes today rather than the ones they made years earlier. Despite that perspective, concerns among some fans continued growing. Online discussions questioned whether the reality series would eventually explore Andrea's background if another season were produced. Many believed viewers deserved to understand the complete story, while others argued that focusing entirely on someone's past ignored the possibility of personal growth and redemption. As opinions continued to clash, the controversy only attracted more attention. Reports also reminded fans that Tammy's journey after the heartbreaking loss of her husband, Caleb Willingham, had been filled with emotional healing. Moving forward after such a devastating experience was never going to be easy. Beginning a new relationship required courage, trust, and the willingness to open her heart again. Because of that, many supporters hoped Tammy had taken enough time to understand every aspect of her new relationship before making any permanent commitments. Another detail that sparked discussion involved the early days of Tammy and Andrea's romance. According to information shared during the series, the pair reportedly met through a dating app before quickly developing a strong emotional connection. Their conversations reportedly became deeper over time, helping Tammy regain confidence after one of the most difficult periods of her life. For Tammy, the relationship appeared to represent hope instead of heartbreak. Still, questions surrounding Andrea's past continued generating headlines. Some viewers believed the issue deserved further explanation, while others felt everyone should be given the opportunity to move beyond previous mistakes. Without official statements confirming every online rumor, much of the conversation remained based on publicly available reports and fan speculation rather than first-hand accounts. That uncertainty only fueled additional curiosity. As anticipation surrounding the couple's future continued to grow, fans found themselves divided once again. Would Tammy's relationship continue growing stronger despite outside criticism? Would future episodes provide clearer answers about Andrea's background? Or would the couple choose to keep those personal matters private? Those questions remained unanswered, but one thing was undeniable: Tammy's personal journey had once again become one of the most closely followed stories among reality television fans. No matter what happens next, Tammy appears determined to keep moving forward. After years of overcoming enormous obstacles, she seems focused on creating a future defined by hope, independence, and personal happiness rather than allowing fear or public opinion to shape every decision she makes. The next chapter of her story may bring new challenges, but it will also reveal whether love, trust, and understanding are strong enough to overcome every obstacle stand in.